I'm Any New Province, and this week we're playing Pestilence for Net Benefits, the series where we explore the benefits of net decking in Pauper. This week's deck comes from a great Pauper player who is also an amazing supporter of my stream content. They go by the username He Who Is in the Water. Pestilence is an extremely powerful deck that's been flirting with the top tier of Pauper for a long time. There's Channel Fireball articles written about it, great players attest to its power, and it's been putting up 5-0 finishes every week recently. This deck is looking to control the board and outvalue your opponent while you continuously wrath any creature they are able to resolve. You can do that with this deck's namesake card Pestilence. It costs 2 black for an enchantment that lets you pay 1 black to deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. That seems sort of powerful even though it's symmetrical. That's why there's another clause included. At the beginning of your end step, if no creatures are on the battlefield, sacrifice Pestilence. This deck is built around breaking the synergy of Pestilence's deal 1 to everything ability. One of the best cards at breaking that synergy is Guardian of the Guildpact. It costs 3 and a white for a 2/3 that has protection from monocolor. Not only does that blank a ton of your opponent's removal and allow Guardian of the Guildpact to become an evasive threat, it also stops it from taking any damage from your Pestilence and leaves a creature on the battlefield at almost all times so that Pestilence doesn't get sacrificed at your end step. Another great way to break Pestilence's synergy is to include cards with graveyard synergy. That way, you can get your creatures back from the dead after they've been wrathed away by a few Pestilence activations. Our first recursive spell is just a good bit of value stapled onto a great evasive attacker. It's Custody Squire. It costs 4 and a white for a 3/3 flyer with the Will of the Council ability, which means when Custody Squire enters the battlefield, starting with you, each player votes for an artifact, creature, or enchantment card in your graveyard. Return each card with the most votes or tied for the most votes to your hand. Often this equates to you getting a single card back out of your graveyard, if your opponent votes optimally, that is. If someone plays a Custody Squire against you, make sure that you zoom in on each card in their graveyard. It'll pop up just above the ability text on the card that they're trying to return that it's already been voted for. Next we have Stinkweed Imp, which brings itself back from the graveyard all on its own if it gets wrathed away by Pestilence, allowing you to put this creature on the battlefield and make sure something's there to stop Pestilence from sacrificing itself. Stinkweed Imp is 2 and a black for a 1/2 flyer, and whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature, which is kind of like Death Touch. It has Dredge 5, which means if you would draw a card, instead you may put exactly 5 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, draw a card. I've already explained some of our graveyard synergies, but this next card gives you a good reason to dredge Stinkweed Imp even just a few times for value. It's called Grim Harvest. It costs 1 and a black for an instant, and it returns target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, which would be pretty bad on its own, but it has the Recover ability, which means when a creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 2 and a black. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, exile this card. We have lots of ways to put creatures into our graveyard already, but Grim Harvest allows us to trigger all of our value creatures a second time. I could see how this could accrue a ton of value and win a game on its own. Next, I'm going to talk about some of our big butt evasive threats that we're probably going to use to win most of our games if we can't win them just off of the back of Pestilence activations. First, we have Core Skyfisher. It costs 1 and a white for a 2/3 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. We have a ton of enters the battlefield triggers, so we're okay picking something up with Core Skyfisher, even if we just want to save it from a Pestilence activation. Next, we have Aven Riftwatcher, which costs 2 and a white for a 2/3 flyer with Vanishing 3, which means this creature enters the battlefield with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from it. When the last is removed, sacrifice it. When Aven Riftwatcher enters or leaves the battlefield, you gain 2 life. Some creatures are very good at dodging Pestilence's activated ability. That means we need some more removal to keep our opponent's board clear while we enact our very slow plan of attack. First, we have Tragic Slip, which costs 1 black for an instant that says target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. It would be a strictly worse fungal infection if it didn't have Morbid, which means that creature gets -13/-13 until end of turn if a creature died this turn. We're also running Deadweight, which costs 1 black for an enchantment aura. That's important because it can be recurred with Custody Squire. It says enchanted creature gets -2/-2. We also have 2 Chainer's Edict, which costs 1 black for a sorcery that makes target player sacrifice a creature. You can cast it again from your graveyard by exiling it and paying 5 black. Our last piece of spot removal is 2 Unmake, which costs 3 hybrid white or black mana. It means you can pay either to pay that cost. It's an instant and it exiles target creature. Finishing off our non-land cards, we have a few value creatures that we would love to recur with a Custody Squire, a Core Skyfisher, or a Grim Harvest. We've got Thraben Inspector, which costs 1 white for a 1/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a clue token, which you can pay to and sacrifice to draw a card. Our last non-land card is Lone Missionary. It costs 1 and a white for a 2/1 that gains you 4 life when it enters the battlefield. That's a huge life swing, but this is also an aggressive enough threat to put a bit of pressure on your Tron and blue-black control opponents. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. First, we have 3 Ash Barrens, which add 1 colorless to your mana pool, but they can also be discarded from your hand by paying 1. When you do that, you can search your library for a basic land card and put it into your hand. We have 2 cycling lands, 1 of each color. There's a Barren Moor and a Secluded Steppe. They enter the battlefield tapped, and when they become untapped, they tap for their respective color. They can also be cycled by paying 1 of their respective color, which means you discard it and draw a new card. Finally, we're running 3 basic plains and 5 basic mountains. This is to have just enough untapped lands to hit our removal spells early and maybe resolve an early Thraben Inspector. And there it is, Orzhov Pestilence. Congratulations again on your finish, He Who Is in the Water, and thank you so much for your support of my content. We're going to take your deck live into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince. We're there every Monday night playing competitive PauperDecks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Monday night.